My father-in-law handed me a gift. He did it with a grand flourish, the way he did everything. The box was wrapped in heavy gold paper, topped with a silk ribbon that probably cost more than my shoes. We were at a dinner celebrating the 50th anniversary of his company, a monument to his ego built of steel and glass. The long, polished table reflected the light from the crystal chandelier above, making everyone look like they were dining underwater. I always felt like I was drowning at these events. "For Clara," Arthur announced, his voice booming across the silence. "A little something to commemorate this special occasion, and to secure the future of this family." All eyes turned to me. My husband, Mark, who was sitting beside me, gave my knee a reassuring squeeze. It felt practiced, automatic. I smiled, a tight, polite curve of my lips that I had perfected over the 3 years of our marriage. Being married to Mark meant being married to his family, and being married to his family meant learning how to smile when you wanted to scream. I took the heavy box from Arthur's outstretched hands. His fingers were cold. I worked at the ribbon, my fingers fumbling slightly. The silence in the room was thick and expectant. I could feel Arthur's gaze on me, sharp and critical. He had never approved of me. I was an architect from a middle-class family, not a socialite with a trust fund. In his eyes, I was a temporary fixture, a decorative object that didn't quite match the rest of his collection. I finally got the lid off the box. Inside, nestled on a bed of black velvet, were several pages of thick, creamy paper, held together by a simple brass clip. It was not jewelry. It was not a deed to a new property. It was a legal document. I lifted the pages out. The heading was stark and brutal: Petition for Annulment. My breath caught in my throat. I read the words again, certain I had misunderstood. But there they were, clear as day. My name, Mark's name. A petition to declare our marriage null and void, as if it had never happened. The room remained silent. I looked up from the papers, my eyes searching for Mark's. He was not looking at me. He was looking at his father. There was no shock on his face. No anger. Just a quiet, tired resignation. I felt a cold dread creep up my spine, colder than Arthur's touch. This was not a surprise to him. "What is this?" I asked, my voice a strangled whisper. Arthur smiled, a thin, cruel slash in his face. "It's a gift, Clara. A fresh start. For everyone." He slid a heavy, gold-plated fountain pen across the polished table. It glided silently, stopping right in front of Mark. "Just a formality, my boy. To protect the family's future. You've already agreed this is for the best." I stared at the pen. Then I stared at my husband. The man I had loved. The man I had supported. The man I had put my own dreams on hold for. I waited for him to protest, to yell, to throw the papers in his father's face, to do anything. He did nothing. He simply picked up the pen. His hand did not shake. He uncapped it with a soft click that sounded like a gunshot in the silent room. Then, without a single glance in my direction, without a moment of hesitation, he leaned forward and signed his name on the line designated for the petitioner. The ink was a dark, definitive slash against the creamy paper. He had just erased me. He had just erased us. And he had done it as easily as signing a credit card receipt. The world didn't collapse. It just went quiet. The vibrant colors of the room seemed to fade to gray. The low hum of polite conversation that had been the backdrop to my life for 3 years simply stopped. All I could hear was the frantic, panicked beating of my own heart. I looked at Mark's signature on the page. It was so confident, so final. He had practiced this. The thought hit me with the force of a physical blow. This was not a spur-of-the-moment decision. This was a performance. I, 28F, met Mark in my final year of architecture school. He was charming, ambitious, and seemed to see something in me that no one else did. He loved my passion for design, my desire to build things that mattered. When he told me he wanted to go into local politics to build a better city, I believed him. His family's wealth was just a background detail, something he seemed almost embarrassed by. I was naive. I see that now. I put my plans to start my own small firm on hold. I told myself it was temporary. I wanted to support his first campaign, to be the partner he needed. We were a team, I thought. We were building a future together. The annulment papers felt like a wrecking ball to that future. It wasn't just ending the marriage. It was claiming it was a fraud from the very beginning. It was designed to invalidate everything, including my sacrifices. It was designed to erase me from his history, to turn me into a footnote he could easily dismiss. I looked from the signed paper to my father-in-law. Arthur's smug expression was one of pure triumph. He had won. He had finally gotten rid of the inconvenient daughter-in-law. I then looked at my mother-in-law, Eleanor. She was meticulously inspecting her fingernails, refusing to meet anyone's gaze. She was the quiet enabler, the one who maintained the family's pristine image by looking away from all the ugliness. And then I looked at Mark, my husband. He finally turned his head and our eyes met. There was a flicker of something there. Guilt? Pity? It didn't matter. It was overshadowed by a profound weakness that I had mistaken for kindness for far too long. He was his father's son, through and through. A puppet on a string, and I had just seen the hand of the puppeteer. I did the only thing I could. I stood up. My chair scraped against the floor, the sound unnaturally loud. I let the annulment papers fall from my numb fingers. They fluttered onto the table, landing next to a platter of untouched hors d'oeuvres. I did not say a word. There were no words left to say. I turned my back on them, on the entire glittering, toxic scene, and I walked out of the room. I walked down the long, marbled hallway, my heels clicking a steady, resolute rhythm. I walked past the ancestral portraits with their cold, judging eyes. I walked out the heavy oak doors and into the cool night air. No one followed me. No one called my name. I was already gone. The ride back to the apartment we shared was a blur. I drove on autopilot, my mind a storm of shock and betrayal. The apartment, once a sanctuary that I had lovingly designed and decorated, now felt like a stranger's house. It was filled with ghosts. The ghost of our laughter in the kitchen, the ghost of our late-night talks on the sofa, the ghost of the man I thought I knew. I walked into the bedroom and pulled a suitcase from the top of the closet. I started packing, my movements jerky and uncoordinated. T-shirts, jeans, my laptop. I threw them in, not caring if they wrinkled. What was I doing? Where was I going? I had no idea. My entire life had been predicated on a future with Mark. Now, that future was a smoking crater. My mind kept circling back to one word: annulment. Why not a divorce? A divorce was a clean break. It acknowledged that a marriage had existed, that a partnership had been real. An annulment was an erasure. It suggested fraud. It implied that the marriage was invalid from its inception. They weren't just ending things, they were rewriting history. They wanted to make it as if I had never been there at all. I stopped packing and sank onto the edge of the bed. I needed to understand. I needed to know why. The answer, I suspected, was not something Mark would ever tell me. I looked over at his side of the room. His laptop was on his nightstand, plugged in and humming softly. I had never touched his laptop without permission. We had respected each other's privacy, but privacy was a luxury for people who trusted each other. I no longer had that luxury. I walked over, my heart pounding. I lifted the lid. The screen glowed to life. He hadn't even bothered to lock it. His email inbox was open, a long list of messages. My eyes scanned the subjects. Campaign strategy meeting. Gala donor list. FW catering options. And then I saw it. A subject line that made the blood in my veins run cold. The Clara predicament. It was a thread between Mark, his father Arthur, and a man I recognized as the family's longtime lawyer, Mr. Hayes. My hand trembled as I clicked on it. The most recent email was from Arthur, sent just that afternoon. Tonight's the night. Everything is in place. Mark, remember the plan. Be firm. This is for the best. I scrolled down, my stomach churning. The thread went back months. Months. They had been planning this for a very long time. I read through the exchanges, each word a fresh stab of betrayal. They were not just planning an annulment. They were building a case against me. They were methodically constructing a narrative that I was a gold digger, that I had married Mark under false pretenses, solely for his family's money and status. We can use her paused career as evidence. The lawyer, Hayes, had written in one email. She claims to be an architect but has not sought licensure or employment since the marriage. It paints a picture of someone with no independent ambition. My breath hitched. My paused career. The career I had willingly, lovingly put on hold to help him. They were twisting my support into a weapon to use against me. They were turning my sacrifice into a crime. I kept reading. It got worse. They were planning to use the community center project as the cornerstone of their argument. It had been a massive undertaking, a revitalization of a blighted low-income neighborhood. It was Mark's flagship campaign promise. I had poured my heart and soul into it. I had designed the central community building, a beautiful, functional space that had won accolades in the local architectural press. I had done it all pro bono, as my contribution to our future, to his success. An email from Mark to his father laid out the spin. I can frame it as me giving her a hobby to keep her busy while I did the real work. The press already sees it as my project. Her name was never officially attached. My name was never attached. Because I trusted him. Because he had told me it was better to keep the focus on him for the campaign. He had used my talent, my creativity, my work, and he was now going to claim it as his own, while simultaneously using it as proof that I was a fraud. The sheer, calculated cruelty of it was breathtaking. They had waited until the project was complete, until he had milked it for all the positive press he could. They had built him up on a foundation of my labor, and now that the structure was complete, they were kicking me out and sealing the door behind me. I felt a surge of nausea. I had to get out of there. I grabbed my phone and started taking pictures of the screen, documenting every single email. My hands were shaking so hard the first few pictures were blurry. I forced myself to take a deep breath. Calm. I needed to be calm. I methodically captured the entire thread, evidence of their cold, premeditated conspiracy. I closed the laptop, my mind racing. The annulment, the fraudulent marriage claim, the theft of my work. It was all one cohesive plan. A plan to use me and then dispose of me, ensuring I was too discredited to ever fight back. They thought I would be so ashamed, so broken, that I would just sign the papers and disappear. They thought I was weak. They had no idea who they were dealing with. The shock was beginning to recede, replaced by a cold, hard anger. It was an anger so pure and so intense it felt like a physical force inside me. It sharpened my focus. It cleared the fog of grief. They had started a war. They just didn't realize I was going to fight back. And I wasn't going to fight fair. I was going to use their own tactics against them. I had the emails. It was a start. But I needed more. I needed to dismantle their entire narrative, piece by piece. My first thought was the community center. Mark was right. My name wasn't on the final public documents. But my work had existed long before he ever announced his campaign. I thought about my personal hard drive, sitting in my desk drawer. It was my digital archive, years of my life's work. On that drive were the original design files for the community center. Every single draft, every revision, every blueprint. And more importantly, every file had a timestamp. Digital fingerprints that could prove, without a shadow of a doubt, that I had created those designs months, even a year, before Mark ever stood at a podium and claimed the idea as his own. I walked over to the desk, my movements now filled with a new sense of purpose. I pulled open the drawer and there it was, a small silver rectangle. My proof. I clutched it in my hand. It felt heavy, like a weapon. I slipped it into my laptop bag alongside my computer. This was my history. They could not erase this. I knew I could not do this alone. I needed help. I needed someone who understood the law. Someone who would be on my side without question. I picked up my phone and dialed the only person I knew I could trust completely. My best friend, Sarah. She was a paralegal at a small but aggressive litigation firm. She answered on the second ring. "Clara? It's late. Is everything okay?" she asked, her voice thick with sleep. "No," I said, my voice cracking for the first time that night. "Nothing is okay." I told her everything. I started with the gold-wrapped box and the annulment papers. I told her about Mark signing them without hesitation. I told her about the emails, about their plan to paint me as a gold digger. I told her about them stealing my work. As I spoke, the full weight of the betrayal washed over me again and tears started to stream down my face. Sarah listened patiently, not interrupting once. When I was finished, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. For a horrifying moment, I thought she might not believe me, that it was all too insane. Then she spoke, and her voice was no longer sleepy. It was wide awake and filled with a cold fury that matched my own. "Those absolute monsters," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "Clara, this is not just a divorce. You were right. An annulment on the grounds of fraud is a character assassination. They are trying to destroy your reputation so you have no credibility to fight them on anything else." "What do I do, Sarah?" I asked, my voice small. "First, you get out of that apartment. Right now. Do you have somewhere to go?" she asked. "I can come to you," I said. "Good. Get here. Bring your laptop, your hard drive, everything. Do not talk to them. Do not answer their calls. Do not respond to their texts. From this moment on, you are a ghost. We are going to build our own case. A case so strong they won't know what hit them." Her words were a lifeline. They gave me direction. They gave me hope. I finished packing my bag, adding the hard drive and a few other personal documents. Before I left, I took one last look around the apartment. It was no longer my home. It was a crime scene, and I was the only witness. I drove to Sarah's apartment, my mind replaying every conversation, every slight, every moment over the past 3 years that now looked different in the harsh light of the truth. Arthur's backhanded compliments about my little hobbies. Eleanor's pitying looks when I talked about my architectural ambitions. Mark's constant reassurances that my time would come. After the campaign. It was all part of the long con. They had been playing a game I didn't even know I was in. When I got to Sarah's, she threw the door open and pulled me into a hug. I leaned into her, finally letting the exhaustion and the hurt wash over me. She let me cry for a few minutes, then she pulled back, her expression firm. "Okay," she said. "Let's get to work. Show me the emails." We spent the next few hours hunched over my phone and then my laptop as I transferred the pictures and walked her through the design files on my hard drive. She scrolled through the architectural renderings, her eyes wide. "Clara, these are brilliant," she said. "This is a career-making project." "It was supposed to be," I said quietly. "For him?" "No," she said, pointing at the screen. "The timestamps on these files predate his campaign announcement by 14 months. This is your work. Legally, morally, and ethically, it is yours. They have committed intellectual property theft on a grand scale." She started pacing her small living room, her legal mind firing on all cylinders. "Okay, the emails establish intent. The design files establish theft. But we need more. An annulment is hard to get. They need to prove you fundamentally misrepresented yourself. What other angles will they be using?" I thought back to the dinner, to the way Arthur had looked at me. It was always about money, about status, about me not having enough of either. They think I'm a gold digger, I said. They will try to use their wealth against me. Okay, so we need to look at the financials, Sarah said. Did you sign a prenup? I shook my head. No. Mark insisted we didn't need one. He said it was unromantic. He said his family's money was theirs and our money would be ours. We kept our finances mostly separate except for a joint checking account for household bills. Smart. Sarah nodded. That makes it harder for them to claim you were after his family fortune. Then her eyes narrowed. Wait, mostly separate? What else? A memory surfaced, something I had almost forgotten. It had seemed so minor at the time. About a year ago, Mark wanted to launch a small tech startup, I explained. He said it was to prove to his father that he could build something on his own, without family money. He needed a business loan to get it off the ground, but he said his credit was tied up in some family trusts. He asked me to co-sign. Sarah stopped pacing. She turned to look at me, her expression serious. Clara, tell me everything about this loan. It wasn't huge, I said. $50,000. The bank approved it easily because my credit is perfect. Mark set up automatic payments from a new business account. He showed me the paperwork for the startup. It all looked legitimate. And where is this startup now? She asked. I frowned. I don't know. He said it was a slow start. He got so busy with the campaign, I guess he put it on the back burner. I haven't really thought about it. Sarah walked over to her desk and grabbed a notepad. We need the details of that loan. The bank, the account number, everything. If you co-signed it, you have a right to see the statements. Something about this feels wrong. They wouldn't leave a $50,000 loose end unless it was part of the plan. The next morning, I felt a sliver of my old self returning. The anger was still there, a hot coal in my chest, but it was now fueling a sense of purpose. Sarah had already been up for hours, making calls to contact and outlining a strategy. Our first step was to get the bank statements for that loan. Because my name was on the account, it was easy. I went to a branch of the bank, showed my ID, and requested the last 12 months of statements. The teller printed them out and handed them to me in a thick manila envelope. I waited until I was back in my car to open it. My hands were steady now. I scanned the first page. There was the initial deposit of $50,000, and then the payments started. Not to suppliers, not for office rent, not for any of the things a tech startup would need. It was a series of small, regular payments, $5,000 on the first of every month. The recipient was a company I had never heard of, Viridian Strategies. I pulled out my phone and typed the name into a search engine. The company's website was slick and professional. It was a public relations and reputation management firm. Their tagline read, "Crafting your narrative, securing your legacy." My blood ran cold. A reputation management firm. Mark wasn't building a startup. He was using a loan, secured by my good credit, to pay a PR company, to craft his narrative, to build the very political image that was now being used to destroy me. This wasn't just a loose end. This was the murder weapon, and my fingerprints were all over it. I needed to face him. I needed to see his face when I asked him about this. I drove to the mansion. I knew Arthur would be at his office, and Eleanor would be at one of her charity luncheons. I was hoping to find Mark alone. I was in luck. His car was in the driveway. I let myself in with the key I still had. He was in the grand library, staring out the window. He looked tired. Good, I thought. He should be tired. He turned when he heard me enter. He looked surprised to see me. Clara, what are you doing here? I came for some answers, Mark, I said, my voice even. I held up the bank statement. What is Viridian Strategies? He flinched. A small, almost imperceptible reaction, but I saw it. It's a consultant for the campaign, he said, his voice a little too quick. Market research. Market research? I said, stepping closer. It says here they are a reputation management firm, and you've been paying them $5,000 a month for the past 10 months, from the loan I co-signed for your startup. He had the grace to look ashamed. He broke eye contact, turning back to the window. It's complicated, Clara. No, it's not, I said, my voice rising. It's simple. You lied to me. You used my credit to hire a company to make you look good, all while you and your father were planning to throw me away like garbage. He finally turned back to me, a flash of defensiveness in his eyes. It wasn't like that. Dad said it was a necessary expense. The campaign needed a professional touch. The campaign? I scoffed. Or you. What part of your reputation needed so much managing, Mark? And why was I the one paying for it? You offered to help. He shot back, his voice gaining strength. You said you wanted to support me. This was part of it. It was for us. The word us hung in the air between us, a bitter mockery. There is no us, Mark, I said quietly. You made that perfectly clear when you signed those papers. There was never an us. There was just you and your family and what you could take from me. I saw something in his eyes then, a flicker of the man I used to know, a glimmer of regret. But it was quickly extinguished, replaced by the familiar mask of weary resignation. Dad thinks it's for the best, he mumbled, parroting the line from the night before. And what do you think, Mark? I pressed. For once in your life, what do you actually think? He just shook his head, unable to answer. He was a hollow man, a handsome facade with nothing inside. I had spent 3 years trying to decorate a house that had no foundation. It was bound to collapse. I left him standing there in the library, a prisoner in his own gilded cage. I had my answer. He was not just a victim of his father's manipulation. He was a willing participant. He knew about the lies. He knew about the scheme. He just didn't have the courage to stand up to it. Or to me. I went back to Sarah's place, the bank statements clutched in my hand. I felt sickened, but also strangely empowered. Every lie they told, every piece of their deception I uncovered, was another stone in the foundation of my own case. A PR firm, Sarah said, shaking her head in disbelief as I told her what I'd found. They used your credit to pay for his political makeover. The audacity is just staggering. She pulled up the website for Viridian Strategies again. Let's dig into this. Who runs this company? We clicked on the About Us page. There was only one person listed. The founder and CEO, a woman named Veronica Cole. The picture showed a sharp, intelligent-looking woman in her early 30s with dark hair and a knowing smile. The name didn't mean anything to me. Okay, so Veronica Cole is the face of the company, Sarah said, typing furiously. But who is she? Let's check corporate filings. She navigated through a series of public record databases that I didn't even know existed. A few minutes later, she found the incorporation documents for Viridian Strategies. Here we go, she said. Incorporated 18 months ago. Sole director, Veronica Cole. She kept scrolling. Wait a minute. There's something else here. The company was funded by an initial investment from a private trust, the Vanguard Family Trust. Vanguard? I asked. Is that another one of their shell companies? I don't know, Sarah said, her brow furrowed in concentration. Trusts are designed to be opaque. It's hard to see who the beneficiary is, but the name is interesting. Vanguard, like a protector, or the front line of an army. An idea sparked in my mind, a connection to a half-forgotten conversation. Veronica, I said slowly. Mark mentioned a Veronica once, a long time ago. It was an ex-girlfriend from college. He said his parents hated her. They thought she was from the wrong side of the tracks. They forced him to break up with her. Sarah's eyes lit up. No way. You think this is her? It has to be, I said. Why else would they be paying her? And why hide it? If it was a legitimate campaign expense, they would just pay her from the campaign account. Because it's not a legitimate expense, Sarah finished. It's a payoff, or something more complicated. They're using your loan to funnel money to Mark's ex-girlfriend, the one his family supposedly despised. This gets stranger and stranger. The pieces were starting to form a picture, but it was dark and twisted. The annulment, the stolen work, the fraudulent loan, the secret payments to an ex-girlfriend. It felt like I was pulling at a single thread, and a whole rotten tapestry was unraveling. Sarah leaned back in her chair. Okay, let's think this through. They need to get you to sign that annulment. They think the threat of the fraudulent marriage claim and public humiliation will be enough. But they've left this loan out there, with your name on it. It's a liability for them. And for you. They think I'll be scared of the debt, I realized. They think I'll be so desperate to get out from under a $50,000 loan that I'll sign whatever they put in front of me. Exactly, Sarah said. It's both a trap and a lever. They're counting on you being emotional and panicked. They're not counting on you being strategic. A plan began to form in my mind, cold and clear. They wanted to use the loan as a weapon against me. It was time to turn that weapon back on them. I needed to know what they would do if I dangled the possibility of signing in front of them. I needed to get them to admit, on the record, that the loan was tied to the annulment. I took a deep breath. I'm going to call Arthur, I said. Sarah looked at me, a warning in her eyes. Clara, be careful. That man is a shark. I know, I said. But sharks are predictable. They smell blood in the water. I'm going to pretend to be bleeding. I found a quiet corner and dialed his number. I practiced keeping my voice trembling, my tone defeated. He answered on the first ring, his voice crisp and impatient. What is it, Clara? Arthur, I began, injecting a waver into my voice. I've been thinking about the papers. And? He prompted, the smugness already creeping into his tone. I'll sign them, I said, making it sound like the words were being dragged out of me. I can't deal with a fight. I just want this to be over. There was a pause on his end. I could almost hear him smiling. A wise decision, Clara. The most sensible thing you've done in years. But there's one thing, I continued, my voice a near whisper. The loan. The business loan I co-signed for Mark. I can't be responsible for that debt. I have nothing. If I have to pay that back, I'll be ruined. This was the moment of truth. Would he take the bait? His voice became smooth and magnanimous, the voice of a benevolent patriarch solving a trivial problem. Don't you worry your pretty little head about that, he said, his condescension so thick I could almost taste it. That's just a loose end. We'll take care of it. Consider it a parting gift. You sign the annulment papers, and that debt simply disappears. I closed my eyes. He had said it. He had explicitly tied the forgiveness of the debt to my signature on the annulment. He had just admitted to using a financial instrument as leverage to compel me to sign a legal document. Really? I asked, feigning breathless relief. You'll take care of it? Of course, he said. The family looks after its own, even when they're on their way out. Just have your lawyer contact Mr. Hayes to arrange the signing. And Clara, don't drag this out. He hung up. I stood there for a moment, the phone still pressed to my ear. I looked over at Sarah, who had been listening intently. I gave her a slow nod. Did you get it? She asked, her voice hushed. I tapped my phone. It's recorded, I said. Every word. Sarah let out a low whistle. He just admitted to what is essentially a form of extortion. He offered to forgive a debt, which is a thing of value, in exchange for you signing the annulment. That call, Clara, that call is dynamite. The night that followed was sleepless, not with anxiety, but with a strange, buzzing energy. The disparate pieces of the puzzle were swirling in my mind, and I was starting to see the full, monstrous picture. Eleanor's quiet disdain, Arthur's overt cruelty, Mark's spinelessness, the stolen project, the fraudulent loan, the mysterious payments to Veronica Cole, and Eleanor, the silent, watchful queen on the chessboard. Sarah had been working her contacts, trying to find a way to see who was behind the Vanguard family trust. It was a long shot, she warned me. These things were designed to be fortresses of secrecy, but her friend at a financial investigation firm owed her a favor. It was a slim chance, but it was the only one we had. The next afternoon, Sarah got an email. It was a single, heavily encrypted file. It took her almost an hour to open it. I paced the apartment, my nerves stretched thin. Finally, she called me over. On her screen was a scanned document. It was a deed of trust, the legal document establishing the Vanguard family trust. My eyes scanned the dense legal text, looking for a name I recognized. Arthur, Mark, Hayes. None of them were there. The trustee was a shell corporation based in Delaware. But then I saw it, tucked away in a clause detailing the distribution of assets, the name of the sole beneficiary, the person who received all the profits and held all the power. It was not Arthur. It was not Mark. It was Eleanor, my mother-in-law. The quiet, mousy woman who spent her days organizing charity galas and tending to her roses. The woman who always looked away. She was the one behind the trust. She was the one who had funded Veronica Cole's company. She was the puppet master. Arthur and Mark were just the marionettes dancing on her strings. I sank into a chair, the room tilting slightly. It didn't make sense. And yet, it made perfect sense. I thought back over the years. Arthur was loud and brutish, but his cruelty was simple, predictable. He wanted me gone because I wasn't from the right pedigree. It was a matter of status. But Eleanor, her disapproval was different. It was quieter, more personal. I remembered a dinner party, early in our marriage. I had been talking excitedly about a new sustainable building material I was studying. Eleanor had listened with a polite, vacant smile. Later, I overheard her talking to one of her friends. "She has so many passions," she'd said, her tone dripping with a strange mix of pity and contempt. It must be so tiring. It wasn't my lack of money she despised. It was my ambition, my talent. The fact that I had a life and a passion that existed entirely outside of her son and her family. She saw me not as a gold digger, but as a rival, a threat to her absolute suffocating control over Mark. The whole diabolical plan clicked into place in my mind. Eleanor was the architect of my destruction. She had seen my talent, seen how it could be used to elevate Mark. So she devised a plan to harness it. She used Arthur's snobbery and Mark's weakness as her tools. She had Mark approach me about the community center, knowing I would pour my heart into it. Then, she needed a way to discredit me and a way to control the narrative. So she resurrected Mark's old college flame, Veronica, a woman she knew the family would never publicly associate with. She funded Veronica's PR firm through the secret trust, creating an arm's-length operation to manage the family's image and, more specifically, to handle the Clara predicament. The loan was the most brilliant, cruel part of the scheme. She had Mark trick me into co-signing it, creating a financial weapon they could use against me while simultaneously funding the very company that was orchestrating my downfall. The annulment was the final act. It wasn't enough to divorce me. She needed to erase me. To nullify my influence, my contributions, my very existence in their family history. The fraudulent marriage claim was the insurance policy, designed to silence me forever. If I ever spoke up, I would be the bitter, lying gold digger they had so carefully created. "It was her," I whispered, looking at Sarah. "It was Eleanor all along." Sarah looked at the document on the screen, then at me. She played everyone. Her husband, her son. Even their lawyer probably doesn't know she's behind this trust. She made them all think it was their idea. "She underestimated me," I said, the cold anger returning, sharper than ever. "She thought I was just another one of her son's hobbies, something to be put away when she got bored of it." I stood up and began to pace, just as Sarah had done the day before. The plan in my mind was no longer just about defense. It was about offense. It wasn't enough to stop them. I had to expose them. I had to tear down the facade of perfection they had spent a lifetime constructing. They're hosting the annual charity gala next Friday, I said. The biggest social event of their year. The mayor will be there, reporters, half the city's elite. It's the night they celebrate their own wonderfulness. Sarah's eyes widened as she understood. That's the stage, she said. That's the stage, I confirmed. They wanted to erase me quietly. I'm going to give them a very public, very permanent place in history. The week leading up to the gala was a whirlwind of preparation. Sarah and I worked like a well-oiled machine. We compiled everything into a neat, undeniable package. The emails from Mark's laptop, scans of my original time-stamped design files for the community center, the bank statements for the fraudulent loan, the recording of my call with Arthur, and the crown jewel, the trust document proving Eleanor was the secret mastermind. Sarah helped me draft a formal complaint for loan fraud and intellectual property theft. We also prepared a press kit, a digital folder containing copies of all our evidence, ready to be sent to every major news outlet in the city. The day of the gala, an invitation arrived for me by courier. A thick, cream-colored card with my name elegantly scripted on the front. It was a breathtaking piece of arrogance. They had sent it weeks ago, of course, but the fact that no one had thought to retract it showed just how confident they were. They assumed I was a settled matter, a problem that had been solved. They thought I was at home, crying into my pillow, preparing to sign their papers. They had no idea I was preparing for war. I chose my outfit carefully. I didn't want to look like a victim. I didn't want to look like a scorned wife. I chose a simple, elegant, dark blue pantsuit. It was professional. Powerful. It was the uniform of an architect, not a socialite. I was going to this event not as Mark's wife, but as myself. As Clara, the woman they had tried and failed to destroy. Walking into the grand ballroom of the city's most expensive hotel felt like stepping back into the lion's den. The air was thick with perfume and the sound of clinking champagne glasses. Hundreds of people, the city's movers and shakers, milled about, their laughter echoing off the high, gilded ceilings. I scanned the room and quickly spotted my first target, a reporter from the city's main newspaper, a woman named Jessica Thorne. She had written the glowing profile on Mark and his community center project. I made my way through the crowd. Jessica, I said with a warm smile. Clara, we met briefly at the groundbreaking for the community center. She smiled back, her reporter's eyes curious. Of course, it's good to see you. Your husband's project is the talk of the town. Actually, that's what I wanted to talk to you about, I said, my voice friendly and casual. There's a follow-up story on that project, a much bigger one. I think you're going to want to hear it. Stay close. I gave her a small, conspiratorial wink and walked away, leaving her looking intrigued. Then I saw them, the royal family, Arthur, Eleanor, and Mark, standing in the center of the room holding court. Arthur was laughing, his voice booming. Eleanor was smiling her serene, empty smile. And Mark? Mark looked like a handsome cardboard cutout of a man. They were the picture of power, grace, and philanthropy. It was nauseating. I took a deep breath, straightened my jacket, and began to walk toward them. The crowd seemed to part for me. As I got closer, a few people recognized me and their smiles faltered, their eyes flickering with confusion. They knew about the separation. Gossip traveled fast in this circle. They expected me to be in hiding, not marching into the heart of the enemy camp. I stopped directly in front of them. The circle of admirers around them fell silent. All eyes were on me. Arthur, I said, my voice calm and clear, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. What a lovely party. Arthur's smile vanished. His eyes narrowed. Clara, I don't believe you were expected. Oh, I have my invitation, I said brightly. But I'm not here for the champagne. I'm ready to discuss the annulment. A flicker of triumph crossed his face. He thought he had won. He thought I had come to surrender. Excellent, he said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial murmur. I'm glad you've come to your senses. We can discuss this in private. I don't think so, I said, my voice ringing out in the sudden quiet. I think we should discuss it right here. After all, you weren't shy about presenting me with the papers in front of an audience. I saw a flash of anger in his eyes. Eleanor's serene smile was frozen on her face. Mark looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. And before we discuss it, I continued, I have a gift for you. For all of you. I opened the leather portfolio I was carrying. I pulled out 3 folders. I handed the first one to Arthur. I handed the second to a stunned Eleanor. And I placed the third one directly into Mark's limp hand. What is this nonsense? Arthur growled, opening the folder. His face went from red to a sickly mottled white as he saw what was inside. It was a copy of the trust document, the one with Eleanor's name on it. I am watching his face. The mask of arrogant control shatters. He looks at his wife, Eleanor, with an expression of pure, unadulterated shock. For the first time, he looks truly lost. Eleanor is staring at her own copy, her hands trembling. Her serene facade has crumbled, replaced by a look of sheer panic. She looks like a cornered animal. And Mark. He is just staring at the paper, his brow furrowed in confusion. He doesn't even understand what he's looking at. He turns to his mother, then to his father, a lost little boy searching for an explanation. I believe that's the document for the Vanguard Family Trust, I say, my voice cutting through the silence. The one that's been funding Viridian Strategies. You know, the reputation management firm you hired? Arthur sputters, trying to regain control. This is a private family matter. He barks, his voice a little too loud. It stopped being a private matter when you decided to defraud a bank using my name. I reply, my voice dangerously calm. I turn my attention to the small crowd that has gathered, their eyes wide with shock and fascination. I see Jessica, the reporter at the edge of the circle, scribbling furiously in her notepad. Let's talk about the loan, I say, projecting my voice. The $50,000 loan that I was tricked into co-signing for a startup that never existed. The loan that was actually used to pay for a secret PR company run by Mark's old girlfriend. I let that hang in the air for a moment. The whispers in the crowd grow louder. And let's talk about the community center, I continue, turning my gaze on Mark. The beautiful building that I designed. I have the original time-stamped files, Mark. The ones that prove I created it long before you ever claimed it as your own idea. Mark flinches as if I've struck him. He looks at me, his eyes pleading. Clara, don't. Don't what, Mark? I ask, my voice laced with ice. Don't tell the truth? Is that what your mother taught you? I look directly at Eleanor. Her face is a mask of cold fury. She takes a step forward, her voice a low hiss. You will not ruin this family. I stand my ground. You did this, I say, my voice dropping but losing none of its intensity. You used your husband's arrogance. You used your son's weakness. And you tried to use my talent and my good name before throwing me away. You ruined this family, Eleanor. I'm just turning on the lights so everyone can see the mess you've made. Arthur finally finds his voice, a desperate, blustering roar. Security, get her out of here. But it's too late. I look past him, my eyes finding Jessica, the reporter. The full story is in a press kit I just sent to your editor's inbox. I call out to her. The loan documents, the design files, and a very interesting recording of your host, Arthur, admitting to using financial coercion to force me to sign an illegal document. The color drains completely from Arthur's face. He looks at me, his eyes filled with a new emotion. Not anger, not shock, fear, pure, abject fear. He lunges for the folder in my hand, a clumsy, desperate attempt to reclaim the evidence. But the damage is done. The whispers have turned into a loud murmur. Phones are out, recording. The perfect glittering facade of their lives has been shattered, and the ugly truth is spilling out for everyone to see. I take a step back, letting the chaos erupt around me. My work here is done. The fallout was immediate and spectacular. The next morning, Jessica Thorne's article was the front page story, not just in the local paper, but syndicated across the state. The headline was brutal. Political scion's career built on wife's stolen work and fraudulent loan. The story laid out every detail of the scheme, supported by the evidence I had provided. It painted a damning portrait of a family consumed by vanity and greed. The public backlash was swift. The board of the charity that had hosted the gala publicly requested the family's resignation. Their names were quietly removed from the list of major donors at the city museum. The social circles that had once revered them now shunned them. They had built their entire world on the foundation of public perception, and overnight, that foundation had turned to dust. Mark's political ambitions were not just damaged, they were obliterated. He became a local punchline, the man who stole his wife's homework to run for office. A few days after the gala, Sarah and I met for a drink. She raised her glass. "To Clara," she said, her eyes shining. "The architect, in every sense of the word. You didn't just defend yourself. You built a case, and you executed the demolition perfectly." I clinked my glass against hers. A genuine smile spread across my face, the first one that had reached my eyes in a long time. "I couldn't have done it without you," I said, and I meant it. "You got your name back, Clara," she said, "and your work. That's more than justice, that's a victory." The victory felt clean. It felt earned. I had not stooped to their level of lies and manipulation. I had simply used the truth, a weapon they had so foolishly underestimated. A few weeks later, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to. It was Mark. His voice was thin, broken. "Clara," he said, I just wanted to say I'm sorry." I waited. The silence stretched. I didn't know. He finally continued. "About my mother. About the trust." I didn't know how deep it went. I felt a pang of something. Not pity, not anymore. It was just a dull, empty ache for the man I once thought he was. "It doesn't matter what you didn't know, Mark," I said, my voice flat and devoid of emotion. "It only matters what you did. And what you did was pick up that pen. What you did was sign the paper. You made your choice. Goodbye." I hung up before he could say another word. His apology was not for me. It was for himself. It was a desperate attempt to salvage a piece of his own shattered self-image. But it was worthless. Some things, once broken, cannot be fixed. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place a week after that. The family's lawyer, Mr. Hayes, called me. His tone was no longer condescending. It was weary and deferential. "Miss Clara," he began, pointedly not using my married name. "My clients are prepared to offer a settlement." "I'm listening," I said. "They will, of course, assume full responsibility for the outstanding business loan," he said. "And they are prepared to offer you a significant financial sum in exchange for your signature on a non-disclosure agreement." A year ago, I might have been tempted. A sum of money to start over, to be free of them forever. But I wasn't the same person I was a year ago. "Tell your clients the loan is their problem to solve," I said, "and I will not be signing an NDA. I have nothing to hide. I am not the one with a reputation to protect anymore." I told him my lawyer would be in touch to handle the formal dissolution of the marriage and the transfer of the loan liability. Then I hung up. The power dynamic had completely and irrevocably shifted. They were the ones who needed silence. I was free. I took the money I had, which was not much, and I did what I should have done 3 years ago. I leased a small office space in a developing part of the city, and I officially opened my own architecture firm, Clara Design Studios. It was terrifying and exhilarating. About a month after I opened my doors, I got a call from the city manager's office. The city council had been deeply impressed by the design of the community center, the one that was now publicly and officially credited to me. They were launching a new, ambitious urban renewal project, a plan to revitalize the entire downtown waterfront. And they wanted to know if I would be interested in submitting a proposal to lead the design team. I hung up the phone, a slow smile spreading across my face. They had tried to use my talent to build their kingdom. Instead, I was going to use it to rebuild a city. I was thriving, not in spite of them, but because of their desperate, foolish actions. They had meant to bury me, but they didn't realize I was a seed. One afternoon, I was leaving my new office. Across the street, I saw a man standing and staring. He was older, his shoulders slumped, his expensive suit looking ill-fitting and worn. It was Arthur. He wasn't looking at me with anger or hatred anymore. He just looked diminished, defeated. He was a king without a kingdom, a patriarch without a legacy. He had spent his life trying to be big, and in the end, he had made himself small. He held my gaze for a long moment, then turned and walked away. They had finally learned what it felt like to be erased.